Simplifying and reducing radicals. This is one of those high school advanced skills that you really need as you go forward with the Pythagorean theorem, with quadratics. There's a lot of spots in advanced math where you're going to have to do something called simplifying and reducing a radical. And these are going to be the three steps we're going to follow. We're going to fully factor, we're going to circle the pairs of factors, then we're going to use our El Chapo knowledge, knowing that El Chapo always escapes from jail, but he always has some help. So when I say radical, that just means it's another way to say roots or square roots. So right here, this is the square root of 32 or radical 32. It's the same word for the same idea. So in order to simplify this, we first fully factor. So how do we multiply to get to 32? There are a lot of different ways that you can do this. So I would experiment with your calculator if you're struggling with your memory, but I know that 8 times 4, for instance, is 32. Now you need to try and break these down as far as you possibly can. So I know I can break 4 into 2 times 2. Now I know I can break 2 into 2 times 1, but that doesn't matter. So I'm done with the 2's. I know that 8 can go into 4 times 2. And I know this 4 can go into 2 times 2. So now if I look at the bottom of the tree, I can't break anything down, okay? So now I have successfully done my first step. I have fully factored it. Now I need to circle the pairs at the bottom of the tree. So I'm gonna go back over here, and sometimes it's confusing to know which numbers I'm looking at. So if I see a number and I broke it down, I'm gonna cross it out so I don't get confused. That 4 got broken down into smaller pieces, that 8 got broken down, and that 4 got broken down. So we should only be looking at the numbers at the bottom. So now I'll circle the pairs. I'll circle those that are right next to each other. And now we'll start processing the final answer. Now this 2 did not have a pair. So that one is left in the radical jail. That square root of 2 is still there. Now we need to process what happens over here. So the first guy is El Chapo, who always escapes. His helper doesn't make it, his helper dies. And the second pair, the first one is another El Chapo that escapes. The second guy in the pair, his helper doesn't make it, he dies. So if you notice, we have 2 numbers that escaped. When that happens, we multiply it, so we get 4 on the square root of 2 for our final answer. Let's try out another example. So the only way this one is different than the other problem is I have a number that's sitting out front, which we'll have to keep track of at the very end. Think of this as the getaway driver, ready for El Chapo. So we need to simplify this radical. So I'm first going to fully factor, break down how can I multiply to get to 128. Now as these numbers get a little bit bigger, sometimes it's more difficult to figure out how to multiply to it. So you can always take your number 128, go to your calculator, divide it by 2, then divide it by 3, then divide it by 4, and see if you get any options that truly do work. My calculator, I did 128 divided by 4, and my calculator gave me a nice 32. So I know 4 times 32 is a way to get to 128. And now I can break down these numbers a little bit easier. 4 can give us our 2 times 2. 32, I know I can do 16 times 2. And then 16 gives me a 4 times 4. And then the 4's each give me a 2 times 2. Okay, so now I think we have broken it down all the way. So I don't get confused. If a number got broken down, I'm going to cross it out. If a number got broken down, I'm going to cross it out. Got broken down, that one got broken down, that one got broken down, and so did that one. So now we see all these 2's at the bottom. So I'll see a 2 here. I see a pair of 2's here. I see a pair of 2's here. And it looks like this one is all left out in the cold. So we'll leave that as the square root of 2 on the inside. If a number does not have a partner to circle up with, it stays in the radical jail. Now each of these one at a time, the first one's El Chapo, the second one's the helper that doesn't make it. The first one's El Chapo, the second one doesn't make it. The first one's El Chapo, the second one doesn't make it. And now we multiply if you have multiple numbers that escaped, but we can't forget one thing, the getaway driver. The getaway driver is also there with those 3 2's. So now we need to multiply this up. 6 times 2 is 12. times 2 is 24, times 2 is 48. All right, the only way this one is different is we have variables now, but we're still start the same. We're gonna fully factor to start, so we're gonna break down the 80 first. So how do we multiply to 80? Well, I know anything that ends with 0 can be multiplied with 10, so I know 10 times 8 is 80. And then I get 5 times 2 from the 10, 4 times 2 from the 8, and a 2 times 2 from the 4. Now, like I said, if I broke a number down, I'm going to cross it out. If I broke it down, I'm going to cross it out. So I'm just looking at all of this down here. So I see a pair of 2's here, and then it doesn't matter if these 2's came from different numbers, those are a pair. And it doesn't look like my 5 has any partner in crime. So that 5 is going to stay in the radical jail. El Chapo escapes. His helper doesn't make it. El Chapo escapes. His helper doesn't make it. And don't forget, we still have our getaway driver up top. 3 times 2 is 6. Times 2 is 12. So we just did the number normal. Now let's go think about what are we going to do with this variable, p to the 5th power. Well, all an exponent represents is p times p times p times p times p. It's whatever the base is times itself that many times. So I just expand it out 5 times. So I see a pair here, and I see a pair here. That p, that 5th one, doesn't have a partner in crime, so it's going to stay in our final answer there. Now over here, 1 escapes, the helper dies. 1 escapes, the helper dies. So I have 2 p's escaping. So down here, I also need 12p squared.